Truma, makers of the Combi Heater and iNet system, are proud to sponsor Practical Caravan TV.
Welcome to Practical Caravan TV, and as you can see, the British summer is here at last. But of course, a little bit of rain never stopped the committed caravanner. And with that in mind, we've got lots of great stuff coming up in the show, including a visit to another fantastic campsite and David Motton's test of the new Volkswagen Amarok pickup. But first, I'm going to take a look at Bailey's new 576 Pursuit. And while you watch that, I'm going to get inside and get dry. There was a time when Bailey was renowned for its family caravans, but in recent years it's become better associated with luxurious couples vans. That's all about to change, however. For 2017, the new Pursuit range is majoring on families, with the 5-berth 565 and spearheading the range, this new 576. It's the first 6-berth from Bailey for some time, and it's a really fine-looking van. Instead of the grey of the previous generation Pursuit, it's gone over to the same polar white as the rest of the Bailey range. Otherwise, it's relatively business as usual, but the key difference is that everything you see here is now standard equipment, whereas in the previous generation Pursuit, you would have had to pay extra for a plus pack, including that AKS hitch stabiliser and indeed the front sunroof. That's great news. What's slightly less good news is the fact that the electric hookup and the gas bottle locker are both on the near side, so they're going to clutter up your awning. However, all of the other services are relegated to the off side of the van. At the front, there's a couple of external lockers, one on each side, and behind this hatch here at the back of the van, you'll find yet more storage space. That's great to see on an entry-level van. Now that storage space is underneath the bunk beds, which is a clue to the flexibility of the interior. Stepping aboard, this lounge area at the front of the van is where the family are going to congregate. And assuming your kids aren't too large, it's actually plenty spacious enough. Should be able to get 6 people sitting around the table in here. And that table is stored just in front of the lounge in this wardrobe. I have to say that wardrobe doesn't really look big enough for a family of 6's clothing. That said, there is plenty of other storage. There are 2 really large overhead lockers here in a pleasant white finish instead of the usual timber effect, and it's great to see a locker at the front despite the fact that this van has a sunroof fitted. It feels really lovely and bright in here too. These fabrics are pleasantly light, and I really do like these neutral curtains too. They're very attractive. We've got a skylight overhead, that sunroof, and the huge front window, so there's plenty of light flooding in. I really like the front shelf as well. That's a feature of these Bailey Alutech models. And there's a couple of drawers, plus a pull-out table beneath it. At night, this turns into a good-sized double bed, although there is a little bit of an L-shaped step in it as a result of this sofa being slightly longer than the one on the offside. There are a couple of reading lights at the front here, although unfortunately, if you're using this bed as a double, the person sitting on this side won't have a reading light. That said, they should be fairly comfortable because the double bed is made up using Ozio mattresses for the first time in 2017. Positioning the washroom and the kitchen in the centre of the van here creates a really neat separation between the front, the parents area, and the back, the kids zone, which we'll come to in a minute. And the kitchen area itself is pretty well thought out. There's plenty of worktop. We've got a good amount to one side of the oven, and if you need more, there's a lift-up flap to the right of the sink to give you a bit of extra food preparation space, although obviously it does impede slightly into that doorway. The sink and drainer are a rather neat combined unit here with a chopping board too. However, there is one problem with the drainer. If we put it in the most natural position, it might melt on the hob. So Bailey has shortened it slightly so that we can place it hard up against the side of the van there, which does mean it's really quite small. Not something you can say about the sink. This square unit is a good size. It's taken from Bailey's motorhome range. Underneath it, there's a refrigerator, and then alongside that hob which is gas only rather than dual fuel and with only 3 burners. But then this is an entry-level van, which also explains why we've got a combined oven and grill beneath. Beneath that, there's a good-sized pan storage cupboard. And then this area here, well, it's blank, and that's because the gas locker is in the centre of the van in this bailey. There is, however, a decent-sized cutlery drawer there. Over the sink, which is a sensible place for it to be, you'll find the microwave, although it is set quite high, and alongside it, a couple of storage cupboards with crockery racks, and one more that's ideal for cereal boxes. Storage is at a bit of a premium in the kitchen area, but then there are those overhead lockers throughout the rest of the van, which should make up some of the shortfall. At the back here, it truly is the kids zone. There's space for 4 kids to sleep and 3 to play during the day in this fantastic dinette area. There's even a plug for them to charge their devices and a little storage cabinet for their books and games. The bunks themselves are a fantastic size. They've each got a reading light and each a window, and this lower one's got a much larger window to avoid it feeling cave-like inside. Underneath, there's more storage space, and that's also where you'll find the spare wheel. And this dinette area really is fantastic. It means you can serve the kids their breakfast when they're clamouring for it without having to put away your bed at the front of the van. So you can have the best of both worlds, a lazy lion, and the kids are sorted and getting on with their board games. There's masses of storage for those games and toys back here, underneath this seat, underneath the other dinette seat, and of course in the 2 overhead lockers. At night, this side turns into 2 more bunks, so ideal if you're a family of 4 and want to bring a couple of friends along, or indeed if you're just a very large family. The lower bunk is made up by dropping the table and rearranging the cushions, and then the upper bunk folds out from here. Now, although there's no screen to separate this area off from the rest of the van, you do get that visual separation of having the kitchen and the washroom there. And of course there's the bonus of having the washroom in the middle, means that if anyone needs to use the loo at night, they're not going to disturb each other. The good-sized shower unit is fully lined and has a vent in the top, plus a soap dish. And this is a good-sized washroom for a van with this layout. There's an electric flush loo, and it's good to see a mirror and a window, although it's a shame it isn't smoked. The sink is a decent size, with a cabinet beneath, but unfortunately there's just the one outlet for the Truma blown air heating. At £1 below £16,500 and 1,450 kilos, the Pursuit isn't the lightest van with this layout, and nor is it the cheapest. However, most of those rivals do have a compromise to be made, whether it's in terms of interior space or in terms of equipment levels. As a complete package, the 576 really does look quite compelling. Like the idea of a van with fixed twin single beds, but only got a small tow car? Well, I might just have the answer for you. This is the Caravelair Antares 450, and it weighs just 1,150 kilos, and that includes a 170 kilo payload. I've got another number for you too, 13,695 quid. For a brand new Caravan, that is really quite remarkably cheap, particularly when you consider that this van does have most of the essentials. We've got an AKS hitch stabiliser there, we've got a couple of alloy wheels, we've even got external access to the space underneath the fixed beds. That's actually quite rare to find in a good value van. We've got more storage space at the front here with this enormous gas locker, where you'll also find the spare wheel. Now, if it looks unconventional, that's because this is actually a French-built van rather than a traditional Brit. It's made by Caravelair in France, and it's brought to the UK exclusively through dealer giant Marquis. But what's it like inside? Bearing in mind its relatively compact external dimensions, the 450 feels surprisingly spacious inside, particularly up front here. I mean, these fixed single beds are enormous, and yes, they're at the front, not in the back as you'd more commonly find them in a British van. The one I'm sitting on is 2 metres long, the other one just a little bit less, and they're both really wide, despite the fact there's a reasonable corridor between them. They also prop up at the head, so you can sit back and read, and for that you get these nifty little bendy reading lights, plus there's a couple of shelves overhead and this useful space for putting your books and cups of tea in the middle. There's bags of storage here too, both underneath each bed and these 2 lockers overhead. There's also a TV point mounted at the end and a curtain to shut this area off from the rest of the van if you've got guests. One thing I really like though, fixed twin beds are a great idea if you need the loo in the night. You won't have to disturb your partner. But what about if you want to cuddle? Well, there's a perfect answer here. There are a couple of infill cushions and panels that turn this into a massive double. As ever with a Continental Caravan, the kitchen is, let's say, a bit compromised. We've got a 3-burner gas hob here, and we have got a little sink with this teeny tap. But now that I've put those up, where are we going to do our chopping? Well, there is a very small lift up flap here, but frankly, I think you're going to have to be a little bit efficient and prepare your cooking before you start by using these surfaces here when they're down. Beneath we have got a cutlery drawer, which is a reasonable size, and beneath that a cupboard too, along with a good sized fridge. And there's more storage overhead in these 2 lockers. But what about the oven? Well, actually this van has been targeted towards the UK market, which means that it does have a combined oven and grill. But it isn't in the kitchen, it's over here on the off side of the van, underneath the world's smallest wardrobe. You really are only going to have to be able to pack very, very short dresses. And underneath that oven, that's where you'll find the Truma heater, which also has a blown air system, although it is fairly basic. In front of that, well, we've got this rather large unit here, and that contains the washroom. The washroom is small, but pretty perfectly formed. The shower tray forms the floor, there's a bench toilet, and not 1 but 2 bathroom cabinets, with a reasonable sized bowl sink and the tap acting as a shower head. Plus there's a little fabric curtain to keep everything dry when you shower. There's no lounge area as such in this Caravelair, but at the back of the van here there is a really good sized dinette, and there are a couple of these big squishy scatter cushions to add a bit of comfort. Realistically though, for true lounging, you're probably likely to use those recliners at the front, particularly as that's also where you'll find your TV. These ones are really a little bit upright. That said, there's plenty of space back here. In fact, although this van is marketed as a 3-berth, there's definitely room for 4 around the table, and masses of storage underneath each seat, couple of shelves and a couple of lockers above, and behind me here, this neat little cubby hole, just the place to store your breakfast cereals so they're ready to bring out in the morning. At night, this turns into a single bed, although, whisper it, I reckon if you've got a couple of kids, they could definitely squeeze onto here. There's little doubt that the Antares 450 is pretty Spartan, both inside and out. And if you're used to a traditional British caravan interior, it's going to feel fairly clinical, although for many, that's part of the appeal. And it's worth pointing out that if you're on a really tight budget and don't have a very big tow car, this van could well be the difference between buying used and buying new. And with that, we come to the end of the first part of the show. But don't go away, because we've got masses more coming up after the break, when hopefully this rain might have stopped. I'll see you in just a few minutes.
Truma, makers of the combi heater and iNet system, are proud to sponsor Practical Caravan TV.